Thanks very much, Madam Chair. And I want to pick up on that need for clarity as it relates to the vaccine rollout schedule. And the numbers I have are with Pfizer and Moderna alone. And by the way, I think it's important that we don't talk about doses, but we talk about the vaccinations that can occur for individuals. I think that is clearer for Canadians, certainly for my constituents. So for those two companies alone that obviously have been approved, 3 million people will be able to be vaccinated on the delivery schedule by end of Q1, 13 million people by Q2, and 36 million people by Q3. Is that correct? And Minister Anand, is that correct? You're on mute, unfortunately. I see you nodding, but you're on mute.
Sorry about that. 3 million by the end of Q1, 13 million by the end of Q2, and 36 million by the end of Q3 of approved vaccine candidates alone.
And as it relates to the additional agreements that are in place, and obviously AstraZeneca has been approved in a number of other jurisdictions, one would think Health Canada could approve it in short order. If AstraZeneca is approved, how many people might be vaccinated based on that delivery schedule by Q2?
Well, thank you again. We are expecting doses of AstraZeneca in Q2. And once we have that regulatory approval obtained, we will be able to ascertain the delivery schedule with the supplier. And so I will ask my deputy minister here if he would like to step in and clarify anything else here. But I will say that there are variables that we need to take into account. First of all, in addition to these AstraZeneca doses under our bilateral agreement, we are scouring the globe for additional doses of AstraZeneca that we can bring into the country as soon as possible. And that is why we opted into the COVAX doses for AstraZeneca. The other G7 countries already have doses of AstraZeneca, so that was not something that they chose to do. And we are going to also work with our supplier itself to move up those doses as soon as possible. And those variables are really important to take into account. And I'll just hand it over to Bill Matthews.
I appreciate that. I a small amount of time as far as it goes. So I move on to Mr. Kennedy, actually, because the decline of capacity, domestic manufacturing capacity for vaccines is well documented back to the privatization of Pinot Labs in the Mulrooney years. But you are an ex officio member, and I see Mr. Kennedy is on. I'm not sure his screen is on, so I'm not sure if he is. Here we go. We've got him back. So you are an ex officio member of the vaccine task force, and I wonder. We have heard John Bell from Oxford in the media here in Canada say, well, the UK went from near zero production capacity to full-fledged production capacity. What were the conversations at that task force, and what if it was determined that it was not feasible to do the same thing here in Canada? What was the nature of those conversations, and what was the advice of the task force at the time?
So I apologize, Madam Chair. I just had to step out for just a brief moment, given the length of the committee meeting. So perhaps I can just try to give a quick answer. So I can't really get into the internal deliberations of the task force. I can say that we did meet and discuss with the UK vaccine task force. We were quite interested in learning the lessons from other countries. I can also say in this issue of the UK experience and the issue of domestic biomanufacturing, I said my ministry did an extensive survey of the biomanufacturing capabilities in Canada. We did that with the support of expert consultants. This was very early last spring in the early days of the pandemic. And I can say that in comparison to the UK, to take the UK as an example, the UK had a number of very large contract manufacturing operators that were capable of quickly shifting to produce COVID vaccine. The UK had also started years before the pandemic, in fact, in 2017, to launch a kind of a significant rebuilding strategy. And actually, one of the big facilities they're building, which won't be ready till later this year, they actually did the permitting and launched the construction in 2019, a year before the pandemic hit. And so, as Minister Champagne had said, you know, the UK certainly pivoted and was able to do manufacturing domestically, but they were starting from a much, much higher base, including kind of.
And on that point, Mr. Kennedy, and I appreciate it, the last point I suppose is to be made is from constituents. They say, well, we want to make sure something like this never happens again, where we face a situation like this and we don't have the necessary national security fundamentally for our domestic manufacturing capacity for vaccines. Can you briefly, when it comes to Medicago, when it comes to Precision Nanosystems, Variation Biotech, the Biologics Manufacturing Center, I mean, walk us through briefly at least the investments that we are making to make sure this never happens again.
Sure, I can do this. Oh.
Very quickly, because
Sure.
we're out of time.
I can just say that members will know that not every vaccine is the same. There are different platforms. There's messenger RNA, there's viral vector, there's protein. And so the advice we got, much as was the case with these international purchases, is to have domestic security of supply, we really need to be looking at investments across a portfolio of different kinds of manufacturing technology. And so that's the investments that have been made. I can speak to this later if there's interest, but we've been trying to cover off those various kinds of technologies and platforms so that we're not dependent on just one thing. I'll stop there.